Oh, hello.
Hey, look at that.
So,
I
really
made the
exciting.
lights come on.
It's nice to meet you.
Yes, it's nice to meet you too.
I wanted to ask you, actually, I know that you've been playing with Psychic TV and Throbbing Gristle, two groups that kind of are enormously influential and sort of, in a lot of ways, created the circumstance that we find ourselves in right now. I was wondering what prompted you to get back together with these groups.
Well, Throbbing Gristle, it ended in 1981 in an unresolved way, basically. We all hated each other. That's unresolved. So we all made up excuses after we finished playing, saying that the reason we really stopped was the Beatles, the Sex Pistols, both broke up in San Francisco, so we should too. And then we didn't really consider what had happened with that band, which was that it became legendary in the same way as Velvet Underground or someone. So I went off at a tangent with one member of that band, Peter Christopherson, and formed Psychic TV. And then he went off and formed Coil. And 25 years went by, more or less. And then all of a sudden I started to get lots of phone calls from writers and record labels saying, "Did you know that it's the 25th anniversary of Throbbing Gristle?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, you should do something about it." And I said, "But we don't speak to each other anymore." So I used a very sneaky trick, I guess. I remembered that I'd promised Cozy, the guitarist of TG, that if my dog died, I would let her know and send her a photograph of the grave. So I took a photograph of the grave of Tanith the dog and mailed it to her. And I thought, she's either going to think this is very sick or she'll write back. And she wrote back. So we basically got back together and started to jam in the studio in London. They flew me out and said, "Let's see what happens if you even speak." And we were put in a studio and we looked at each other for a while, and then somebody brought me a brand new bass guitar and I started to doodle, and everyone went, "Oh, that's a nice riff." And we ended up making an entirely new album.
So there's still all that chemistry, the chemistry still existed?
The chemistry still exists when we record or play music. The antagonism still exists as soon as we stop.
Do you think if the antagonism was resolved, would it be like?
Oh, if
would it be less interesting, or?
I've come to the conclusion that the hatred is the key.
Yeah.
That in fact there are some bands that only work because of the tension, and then there are other bands that work because of the integration or the empathy. So TG is a band built on anguish, whilst Psychic TV is very much about joy and friendliness and happiness.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk about that song. Like you're sort of credited with creating industrial music and start spawning this movement, and then Acid House in a similar way. When I hear Psychic TV, it seems to me like maybe you're responsible for Britpop as well. Like in a way, I mean, a lot of the aesthetics and everything. It's sort of like I'm not blaming you for that, but
well, I am from Manchester. Don't forget, I'm from Manchester.
Exactly, you're from Manchester, yeah.
And we're known as being very sarcastic people, ironic people. I guess you could say, actually, I'd never thought of that until now, but...
And I know that you collaborated with Andy Weatherall.
Andy Weatherall.
Who, of course, was instrumental with the Screamadelica record.
And Ian Curtis was a friend of mine, too. In fact, I was the last person who actually spoke to Ian before he died. He called me up from Manchester, and he sang me one of my Throbbing Gristle songs, Weeping, off DOA. And as he sang it, because I knew it was a song I wrote about committing suicide, I realized that he was going to kill himself. So I made all these frantic phone calls to all the people I knew in Manchester, because I was living in London. And I said, someone's got to get to Ian's house. He's going to die. And I've since discovered the reason that no one took any action was that Mick Middles, a writer, was having his wedding party that night, and they were all there at the reception. So for years I was really angry at people in the Manchester scene because I thought they deliberately didn't go, but it turns out they weren't there.
Yeah.
So these messages were left on machines all over Manchester and not heard in time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a heavy responsibility.
Did that have anything to do with the more positive aspects of psychic TV, or?
It did, because I still can't listen to Joy Division without getting upset and crying. I very rarely play their records, but it struck me then that I'd also reached a point before splitting with TG where I'd also tried to kill myself. And Ian had said, you mustn't. You've got a contribution to make. And another friend of mine, Monty Gazaza, said, don't kill yourself. Even if you don't make any more music, stay alive out of spite. Because there's so many people who would wish you dead that if you just stay alive, you'll really piss them off.
It's revenge.
Yeah, get revenge that way. Thank you. So it's Monty that's responsible for the fact that I've continued to try and make people think a little bit.